So just to reiterate what we did last time was to talk about multi-sector funds, why they're good for the client, why they're good for the planner, and why they're good for AMP. But the emphasis there was on efficiency and profitability of your business. This time we're just going to take a different approach. We're going to take an economic approach this time, because when your planners say, oh, well, you know, I don't care about Russell, you're making lots of money, I don't care about here, I'm a very smart planner, I want to do my own thing, and I've got this multiple portfolio, it's doing fantastically, and blah, blah, blah. But what we're trying to do here is show you that most planners are using a rear vision mirror to drive somewhere. They're looking at the past history and say, we can still get 10% returns and we still can do this. But I'm trying to tell you the world has changed. And we're going to go through the economics today of that, so you can go out and say to the planners, the world has changed. Your view of the world is wrong.
Russ, can I ask you a question to start?
Mm-hmm.
Just going on from your last visit to us, which was, you know, really, really good. Looking at some of the multi-manager range today, you still feel convicted?
Absolutely. I'll show you the reason why.
Okay.
Okay? Because it's more about process than just the, okay, you'll always have good fund managers and have bad fund managers. That's not the issue. This is more about potential of the returns for the future, not what we've done last 10 years. So the first thing is we're in a low inflation environment. Everyone knows that. But everyone knows that also the relationship between inflation and returns is very strong. So we're experiencing low inflation all around the Western world. It's not just recently, it's been dropping since about 1972, 73, if you all remember. We had the first world oil shock, where prices of oil went from $3 a barrel to $12 a barrel, and that created inflation all around the world.
That's when we were born.
Oh, that's right. You weren't born, yeah.
73.
73. So that inflation shock went through the system, and then we had 81, 82 when the Russians invaded Afghanistan. And all this is due to OPEC. OPEC had the control over oil, mainly in the Middle East, Nigeria and Brazil. But since then, OPEC's powers declined because all the countries kept cheating, overproducing, and never sticking to their things. The only one who's kept the whole thing going is the Saudis, who are they're contrary producers. If it's oversupplied, they cut back production. If there's undersupply, they increase production. But over time, inflation's been going down, 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 as they say in Coles. So the key thing in world inflation is it's not just Australia's been having a low inflation, it's the rest of the world. But some of the factors, of course, are not just oil prices have gone down, it's because of China. China's undercut the manufacturing of the world. Costs have gone down. Countries from Europe to America, Japan have had their whole industries hollowed out, from cars, textiles, footwear, clothing. Whole industries have closed down and moved to China. And that's been the second issue with the decline in inflation, in my view. So the trend in Australia is the same, declining inflation over time, so that's from just recent times. But the real key problem for us as planners is we're going to now see that because inflation's down, the return's down, because the risk-free return on government bonds dictates everything else. That your returns above that for term deposits and above that for once we go back here, going above that for your other funds, from property to shares. So the key thing here is, got Melissa Gilbert coming in today. She's a planner who likes my story, so spread the word. So the key thing here is inflation will dictate what your returns are across all the different sectors. So that's important, because if we're now going to have low inflation, lower than the expected rate of 2 to 3%, we're looking at 1 to 2%, we're going to have to expect our clients to be educated about getting lower returns and accepting lower returns as the standard, not just an aberration. So we know we had the first negative inflation for many decades, back in December 2015. And we're now still only targeting around, we're still tracking now 1.5% 12 months later. But the target for the RBA is 2 to 3. So it's still well below target.
Is there anything on the horizon that will change the view? I know the news coming out of the States about Trump's policies
Possibly.
is that they're very inflationary.
Could be, yeah, could be. If he raises tariffs he'll create a whole lot of inflation in the US if he spends lots of money and the risk-free rate of bonds goes up because he's spending lots. He's got to borrow the money from the public to get the money to spend on infrastructure. Those two things. If he puts the NAFTA, if he cancels the NAFTA or stops the NAFTA agreement to a certain degree between Canada and Mexico, he loses a lot of the cheap labour content in Mexico. And if he deports the people from Mexico, from Mexicans back to Mexico, he's saying 3 million people, he's going to soak up some of the pool of labour, the low-cost labour that the US uses to produce lots of, basically the Mexicans provide help in the house, gardens, do all the rubbish jobs.
Working in his hotels.
And working in his hotels, that's right. So if you lose that pool of labour, this has already been done. One of the states in America, Arkansas, already did a deportation of migrants, Mexican migrants. The next year, wages went up for all the low-income workers because they had economic power to push up wages, and people lost their home, the home carer, the gardener, all that sort of stuff. So the economic and the economy went into a 2% decline the following year. So the corollary of that is that we could see not only inflation but a recession at the same time. That's how it could create it. Not so. Hold on to how to see what happens. Anyway, we're in low inflation land in Australia, not getting the targets the RBA wants, and around the world, all the Western governments have been trying to get inflation up, not down, because you don't want deflation. Why don't you want deflation? Is because everyone stops spending.
Cheaper tomorrow than it is today.
That's right. You stop spending. The Japan story. 25 years of no growth in Japan. No wage growth, no property growth, no GDP growth. So we've got now down to a very low underlying inflation rate of 1.6 at this stage. Previous quarters going back decades. What's causing it is, as I said, China. Women's shoes, electronics, cars now, they're bringing in the Great Wall car, textiles, clothing and manufacturing, and the price of milk products have gone down. So cheese and ice cream, and although I haven't seen cappuccinos go down yet, but all these things are pulling down, with negative inflation, pulling down the overall inflation rate. So what's going to happen? If interest rates are very low, if inflation is very low, and around the world a lot of countries have got zero interest rates on their money, no real returns. Some places have got negative. A lot of countries, Denmark, there's about 10 to 12 countries got negative inflation and negative interest rates.
Well, Japan's still operating negative interest rates, right, Russ? And people are locking money in at minus 2%.
That's right.
I mean, what's going on there?
Well, because the deflation means they're expecting the deflation to be, say, -3, -4. So you're still making money.
Yeah.
Because your power of your money is still more. So it's a pretty weird concept there that even though you get less money back, you're still making money. Okay, so...
It's like the analogy is fund managers make the report minus 9% return compared to the average of minus
10.
Outperformance.
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 That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So, okay, if we're going to have very low returns, how are we going to tell our clients this? Because they're expecting to live in retirement on 6 to 7, 8, 10% returns each year on average. And how are we going to say to them, well, no, returns are now 0 or low on the fixed interest component. How are we going to get your money to last for 20, 30 years? So this is interest rates. Obviously, people have been used to these sort of high interest rates in the 70s and 80s, and people used to retire. They'd either do two choices, either go down the share market and buy stocks, or they go on to their bank manager and leave money in term deposit for 10 or 20 years. The guys who left money in term deposit said, well, my money's safe, I'm getting 12, 13% a year, I can live off that, and they happily lived in retirement for about 10, 12 years until their money ran out, because what they could buy with that money was declining at 10% a year on average. If you have 10% inflation for 10 years, your money's only worth a third in buying power of what you had in the previous 10 years. So they were really eating up their capital when they had inflation. They thought they were just living off interest, but they were really eating their capital up. Because in 10 years' time, they could only buy a third of a house rather than a house with their superannuation money. So interest rates are low around the world, inflation's low, interest rates extremely low and at a bottom. And you probably heard Shane Oliver's called the bottom of the bond market this week or last week. He's saying that now we've got interest rates after the last 20 years, or 30 years in fact, we're now at the bottom of this cycle of interest rate falls. That we can't really go any further. That's the message. So if interest rates do go up in any time in the future, we've potentially got a bond market crash because everyone doesn't want to hold 10-year bonds when they're losing money. It's another issue, but we'll have to, I'm not sure the answer to that, but obviously our fund managers have already know that and they've already got short-dated securities and they'll just hold the security to maturity. That's the theory. We'll see what happens. Anyway, interest rates are low, dropped a lot since the GFC, and we're down around zero rates for most of the world, the developed world. Australia, fortunately enough, is still up there relative to the rest of the world, still relatively high interest rates. So we're a bit protected at this stage. So expecting returns on, say, if you drop inflation and get and adjust everything down, we should only get 4 to 6% returns on property, and a lot of commercial properties now are only selling at around 6% yield. Shares around 6 to 8. So it all looks pretty sad from the return point of view. So where can we get the returns if we're going to say to clients, well, sorry, you just have to suck it all up and just live on less and bread and water? How are we going to get some returns? Well, my answer is the balanced funds or diversified funds. Because if you go and look at the incomes from balanced funds, they are quite good income generators. Very good income generators, and I'll show you why. But if you look at the income on a balanced fund, they're roughly giving twice what a term deposit is these days. And secondly, you're getting capital growth in there as well, because you've got a growth component in there with your shares and property components. So if you look at shares, Australia's companies produce around, pay out dividends around 70% of profits, very high paying dividends, so we're one of the highest paying dividend yields in the world. We are actually the highest, of all the developed world, we pay out the highest dividends. If you look at our bond yields, around 2%, most other countries have got 0 or even sometimes negative yields, so we're good on the yield point of view for bonds, but we're even better on the dividend yield, as in payouts. So we pay out very well on our companies, as we know, and the other thing is that we, this is just the long-term rate payouts here, I think, for different countries. And we've consistently done that. It's not as just an aberration that we're sitting around 70%. We're always been paying around 67% dividends. So that's one source of income for our clients, whereas the average in the MSCI is only about half that.
So, Russell, please go back a minute. There seems to be an inverse relationship for the MSCI to Australia at the GFC.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
What kind of triggered that rise in international equities paying out?
Well, because they dropped more than we did. We had a boom in 2007 and 8.
So it's the old analogy, everybody steps backwards and they stood still. So
That's right. Yeah. We had a boom year, 7 and 8. 2007 we had a resource boom, had the lowest unemployment for 20 years. We had major development projects all around Australia. Currency was high, and yeah, we were in the boom time. So the price of shares went up, and therefore the dividend yield as it was paid.
I mean, MSCI is composite, right? Composite index. So, I mean, if you look at that period of time, I mean, Aussie market did have a run, right? If you think at 2007 October, market was 3,200.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, we have really ridden a nice market up until quite recently.
That's right. Yeah. It's paid now. That's right.
Particularly emerging cap, small cap market is flown.
That's right. Because you go back to 2008 and 9.
GFC with that.
No, so what if about this logic? If you've got a company in Australia and a company in, let's say, America,
Yep.
both companies earn $100 profit.
Yep.
ASX 200 companies paying out at 70%, so they're paying out $70 of profit before the GFC. In America, they're only paying out $40 of profit. GFC happens, profits halve. The American company might be paying out $25 on 50, whereas now we're paying so the percent, because
So
of where the
level.
profits come
Yeah, because the price has
down.
dropped of the share.
Yeah.
It depends on what your ratio based on
The
the share
yield
price.
to value ratio.
That's right. Why do you want to buy when the share market crashes? Is because the yield is actually very high on that, in dividends.
But I think the mystery world is, it's taking the aggregate of all indexes, yeah, not just the US.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
50% US.
That's right, 50% MSCI is US, yeah, that's right. So, obviously, a balanced fund, if we can get some good incomes from there, or any diversified funds, and I'll show you the others in a minute, but most people use the balanced funds as a core, we can achieve at least around 7% return as a historical basis. This is what Shane Alder's team over at AMP Capital have done, is they look at the projected returns on a balanced fund over the next few years. I think it's probably 5 years, projected might be a 5-year return. So we're going from 2009 where they were projecting something like 10% return, but they're now projecting less than 7 on returns going forward. And I think that's pretty accurate. I think we're looking at 5 to 6 to 7% return on a balanced fund.
So the reality is they're expecting the yield to be fairly consistent, but the growth to be not much more ahead of inflation.
That's right, yeah. And that's where we start to say, well, if you can't get your growth, you've got to now rely on income. So, low returns impact on what clients can earn and the ability to build up assets for retirement. So we're looking at two things. We're going to have less money in retirement for these clients, and potentially when you start to go through retirement, they're going to run out potentially early, unless we can keep their returns up in other ways. So saying they're going to potentially use up their money quicker, but one of the things you've got to start to educate clients about is because inflation's so low, they're not eating their capital up. So where a lot of people in the 70s and 80s had high inflation, they were living off their interest, but they're really eating their capital. We've got to be able to change that story around, saying if you're only getting 1 to 2% inflation, you're only losing 1 to 2% of your capital into inflation. Therefore, you can eat into your capital as a payment on your overall income streams if you're in retirement. It's not going to, your capital is only going to drop by 1 or 2% a year over a 10-year period. That's 10 to 20%. If it's 3 to 4% inflation, your capital's lost 30 to 40% over that period. So we've got to change the conversation around saying, okay, if we're not going to get 7% returns for you anymore, and you only get 5, you're still going to eat into your capital, you're still going to get the net result over a 10 years period. That's something new we have to educate our clients about, eating up their own capital. I mean, they're usually pretty good about it, but I'm just saying it's going to be a new message. If you can't get the returns, don't panic, don't jump out the window, because we're in past eating your capital up with inflation. So we all know that trying to get clients through retirement now is a big issue. Every time we do the census, the life expectancy goes up. Every 5 years when we do the census, we've got now 82 for females and that's 81 for males. And that's not a recent phenomenon, it's been going up since 1905. You can actually go back, the first census was in 1865, I think it was. And the life expectancy has always been going up. So we've got a longer period to get people through, we've potentially got lower returns. What are we going to do? How are we going to get them there? As I said, the inflation now is lower, so you've got to put the message out that they're not losing as much capital each year on their inflation. But how can we enhance the returns without taking more risk? I mean, theoretically you say, okay, put all the money in shares and you'll all be fine. Of course, every time the share market goes down, they want to pull their money out and we all get egg on our face. So, as I said, the multi-sector funds can generate some good income. And they're getting income, of course, from the coupons from the bonds, rents and dividends. But there's also a capital gains component, which people are forgetting about.
Right. Can I just ask you a question? The previous slide, very interesting point you make, and something I run into a lot with Ross advisors, is too many assets in a portfolio. So I appreciate your point, sort of saying they're given the, return sort of profile, you would expect to see less assets in a portfolio. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean less growth assets.
Well, let's say less assets across. So to give you an example, I've got one practice whose average client would hold 20 different funds in their portfolio.
Oh, right.
So,
I'll address that because that's about fees, because it costs and fees, and I'll prove you that's a bad thing to do.
I think it's too complex.
Too complex and not doing quite any good either. So, I'm saying multi-sector ones can move money around. This is an issue that multi-sector funds can do and single sector funds can't. You can't move your clients around to improve your efficiency. There's been studies done in America. There was a big study done of over 900 super funds. They found up to 1% a year was being added by buying and selling between market sectors. That's something you don't do when you've got single sector funds. You can't do it. So, an up to 85% returns can be attributed to asset allocation. This is, people think, oh, you just have to put in shares and off you go. No, it's more about asset allocation, optimising between sectors. And that's sort of a message we need to get out there. And as I said, it eventually comes back, if you can realise some gains along the way by moving between the sectors, you can actually get a decent income. And this income is on the index funds that I use a lot of, 5% there, 5.7. In fact, the more growth investor, the more income you're generating from moving between sectors. So having a high growth investor is actually generating more income. That's a good story. That's the 10-year return per annum on a growth fund, so we did that. And a high growth fund, we've done that. But now I'll just say, well, okay.
Pre-tax, yeah.
That's right, but that was the index funds. Now look, other companies around Australia, the big four bank funds, all generating very good incomes from their balanced funds. Consistently.
Think of the right ones at the top, of course.
That's the right ones at the top.
The best of breed.
That's right, best of breed. That's what you're there. But, you know, it's amazing how consistent we are. You know, I would have thought, you know, not big on more variation, but the only one's Colonial down there, but they're all pretty good incomes per year on average. And this is a composition of the actual incomes. This is just on the index fund, the balance fund that I use. Key thing here is you've got a fair bit of variability in the capital gains, which you could expect. You know, some years you're making more money than others. You've got your income down here, interest income coming in. Obviously maybe declining in general because interest rates are lower. You've got your dividends coming in, and then you've got some other gains up here, which I'm not sure of, but you've got foreign income coming in as all the time. So what I'm saying is that it'll vary, the mix will vary from year to year, but there's a capital gain component which will be very important over time. So single sector funds, I think, are just wrong for the client. I think for planners out there doing it, I think they're just doing a disservice for the clients. The first one, I think, is just a too high cost. And they try and defray that now by using licks into the funds so they can keep the price down. But ultimately, there are other issues. Difficulty picking who's going to be the best manager. They always use last year's manager, using yesterday's heroes to put them into the portfolio. You run the risk that the clients will pull out of the sectors which have gone down. It's very hard to stop a client saying, why has it gone down? Why are we in this investment? Get me out of here. I don't want to be there anymore. And then realising a loss. And this is something I got out of the Wall Street Journal the other day. This is the fund managers, top 20 in 2005. Now, 10 years later, they've all underperformed pretty much. So, picking yesterday's heroes doesn't work, but try and tell planners that. So, if they're trying to greater returns, using your multi-sector fund's got some great advantages. You've got a good income for a start. It's going to protect the planner because they're not being exposed to seeing the sectors that are going down, because clients will always want to pull those out of those sectors and go into the ones that have gone up. It's just a natural reaction. And you've got to try and stop that. We've got to be contrary. We've got to put money into those sectors. And that's what the potential for the multi-sector manager to do. He's not coming back to you and say, gee, we're going to put all our money into the sectors going down. It's doing it's underneath. It's been done there by the fund manager. And he's reducing the risks and looking at assessment, as you know, the AMP approach of the stoplight approach to assess which sectors are overvalued, pulling back on those, going to sectors undervalued. That's got to work eventually. I mean, short term you can have short term. You won't get a performance every year, but it's got to work over time because you've got capacity to move between the sectors. So everyone's historically has been using the share market as the growth part of our portfolio, but now I'm going to talk about have they really. This is the Australian share market. That's a bit wrong. It's been 10 years, the share market going sideways in Australia. We talk about shares as growth investments. They have in the last 10 to 15 years. Around the world, not just Australia, USA, Britain, Japan, I can even go and show you South Korea and other countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, they haven't been going up. So where's this growth coming from? It's not there. Why? Because I think the hollowing out of the European, American and Japanese economies by movement of these major sectors into China has taken away the profits. The manufacturing sectors don't have those profits anymore. And the Chinese economy has got cheap capital because people save like crazy over there. They can consume lots of capital to keep their businesses going, even if they're not profitable. So they've got a lot of unprofitable industries in China, but they still keep propping up because it's a communist country. You don't run it on capitalist principles. They don't go broke. They just keep propped up by the government. In fact, you know, an incredible system where they're producing 800 million tonnes of steel this year. They really only need to produce 750, but they're still producing, still coming out the door. So we've got this major phenomenon of a non-capitalist economy pulling down the profitability across the board of most of the industrialised world. And that's why I don't think the share markets have gone sideways. That's just why they're going sideways. There's no real profit. There's profit coming in new sectors like technology, aerospace, pharmaceuticals, chemicals. But that's been offset by the decline in car manufacturing, textile, clothing, and footwear because they've moved to China. And they're not in the MSCI. So, you know, look at that, up and down, up and down. US share market, you really could say, has not gone anywhere since 2000. It has gone up. The only reason the MSCI is up in the last since about 2009 is the US share market, because it's 50% of the share market. The MSCI is the US share market. And it's just come through that period where it had a huge drop and then come back up again. But we're not seeing the growth. What are we doing here? Oops. So we're not seeing the growth in shares that we used to. So that story is going to be a difficult one to go forward with because nobody's really looked at this and said, yeah, well, where is this growth? We just said, oh, well, we went down a bit, we'll go back up again. It'll be back to 6,500 points next year. Well, we haven't got there yet. We can get to 5,500, crash back down, go to 5,500, crash back down. Because we can't see profitability. Banks not going to be much more profitable next few years. And resources, okay, they're seeing a bit of an improvement now, but their profitability is still going to be limited. That's the two major sectors we've got. It's only really two industries we've got in Australia. So the Australian share market really can't see much growth in the next 10 years. So you've then got to be able to start to move in and out of these sectors to make money, if you're going to make money. Now, in the long term, as Milton Keynes said, we're all dead. It's all very well to say that's going to go up in the long term here, but we're now talking 10 and 20 years where we've seen literally no growth in the share markets. So they do rise over time at greater rates of inflation, but the benefit for retirees, we've got to get through 20, 25 years. It's still got that same problem of getting through that long periods of time, generating income, and this is one of my favourite graphs, because this is what I show to people when they retire. 3 hours before retirement, they come in and say, how am I going to live? I said, well, you've been investing all this time in your superannuation funds, and you bought your Coles and Woolies and banks all the way through this period, and then the income started growing. So when you come to retirement, you're not starting with a 4 or 5% income. You've got an income that's grown all the way through. If we could track all that income, it started when you first invested. I can't understand why they say you've got this sequentially risk of clients losing money in the first year when the market goes down, because they've not invested for the first. When they come in after retirement, it's not, they haven't invested for money, they've invested for 20 or 30 years. So there's no sequencing risk, in my view. If the market drops in that year they retire, they've still moved from their industry super fund into your super fund. They just swapped the names of the super fund. The underlying investments are going to be still Coles, Woolies, and the banks and all those companies. They haven't lost that revenue stream because they've actually built it up all through that period of time. So the key thing is we do say that this income will rise over time, but we're still seeing it going sideways since 2007-8 in the Australian share market, and that's pretty much just the case around the world. So we're not seeing the growth, but we're not seeing the profit growth either. This one here. Okay, let's talk about clients. AMP clients, 90% of clients over 55 have got less than $250 million. How are we going to service them if we're doing what we were saying over here, 20 different single sector funds? Most of our client base has got those amounts of money. There's not many people, only 10% have got more than $250 million. Now, who are the planners going out there and saying, oh, I've got only high net worth clients? Well, I don't believe them because the market says that they've got very little chance of getting that last 10%. So we've got to find up solutions, and obviously this is why we've got the Spark shops to be able to get those clients in, service them, and get them through retirement. How do we do it efficiently and still make money? So I'm saying the multi-sector tool has got to be the best tool for us because it's cheaper, more efficient, and good for the client as well. I can have a business which has got a 48% gross profit because I only use pretty much multi-sector funds. If I had single sector funds, I'd be limited to probably only 150 clients. I've got over 450. We've got over $130 million in Summit North and Mine North. Mal's about 120 million of that. About 100 million is multi-sector funds. So you can have a business like that, and this is the important point, that if you don't have a business which is set up to, if you don't have that mentality of setting clients up the proper way initially, you're going to hamstring the business going forward. You can't have more than 150, 200 clients if you're doing 20, up to 20 single sector funds in each client. It's just not possible. You're just running around in advertised circles trying to service that client, over-promising when they first set it up, and then constantly after that being restricted by how many clients we have.
Have a reweight portfolios, might
Crazy.
like
The
it costs
number-
you 2 headcount.
Yeah, I mean, it's the risk of putting in the wrong fund, clients concerned about the buy-sell margins, getting an audit one day and they said, oh, you didn't put it in the right fund. Oh, did oh, okay, I know of a planner who put it in the wrong fund. They moved it from one plan, one was like a Vanguard International, and they went to hedged rather than hedged. And they got caught in the audit and said, well, you put it in the wrong fund. Ah, well, you're up for the buy-sell margin there to move it across. The clients didn't do as well in that fund, you're therefore up for the difference in the returns. Just pay up. Not good.
And a file.
And a fail, yeah. And you put them in the, yeah, that's right, it wasn't a recommended product. So what we're saying here is that the old rules of diversification still work. Diversification adds an income over time, which most people have undervalued in our balance fund. Especially in these low interest rate times, clients are looking for income, but your diversified fund, whether it's an income generator or your balanced fund or growth fund, they're still all great at producing income because you can move money between sectors. Effectively, you're saying to the clients that if you don't have if you have a single sector funds, you're actually losing one level of return by moving between sectors. And if we're going to have a flat share market for the next 10 years, you've lost that return because you're not realising it as it goes up and down, up and down. So the benefit of income generation has been underlooked for retirees in particular, and even the accumulators. So if you've got that income coming in, you can buy more units in the fund, and it's more reliable in the sense of realised gains better than unrealised, especially in this market's going as well. So the other thing is picking fund managers. Obviously, a single sector fund, you've got to pick the managers is going to be good for next year, not in the future years. They often just pick what was good last year. And often another thing they do is they pick all the same styles. They say, oh, these 3 great fund managers, but they're all the same style. They're all fund managers who are firing at the same time because they've got them in the same type of investments, which are either value or growth or something like that. And then when the market does turn and that style of investing goes out of fashion, you've got 3 fund managers